the night Dara Sutton worked her first solo dinner shift at Cornerstone. She told herself the hardest part would be remembering the specials. She was wrong. She had been stationed at the host stand for 12 minutes, waiting for the floor manager to release her to her section when the woman walked in. She came through the brass-handled door at 7:40 on a Thursday, alone, in a charcoal blazer and low heels, a slim leather folio under her arm, not loud, not late. She gave her name at the host stand to the other server, Brianna, and Dara watched Brianna type it in and nod toward the window booths. Everything ordinary. Then Harlan came out of the back. Harlan Griggs had managed the floor at Cornerstone for 11 years. He knew every table, every wine pour, every regular face. He crossed the room in 6 strides and stopped at the woman's elbow before she had taken 4 steps. "I'm sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "We're actually fully committed tonight." The woman stopped. She turned to face him. "I have a reservation," she said. Her voice was even. No edge in it, no alarm. Just a plain statement of fact. "We had a booking discrepancy," Harlan said. "I apologize for the inconvenience. I can have someone take your number, and the confirmation came through this morning." She opened the folio and produced a printed page. 7:40. Window booth, party of 1. Harlan glanced at the page, not long enough to read it. "Our system shows the table unavailable." Dara was close enough to see the booth in question. It was empty. The silverware on it was set and polished. A candle burned in the center. She looked at it, then looked away. The woman followed her gaze to the table. She looked at Harlan. She did not raise her voice. "Is there a reason that particular table is held, or is the room simply at capacity?" Harlan Griggs said, "Ma'am, I think you'd be more comfortable at one of our casual venues nearby." "I'd be happy to. That won't be necessary." She said it the way a person says something they have already decided. She took a card from the folio, plain white stock, no flourish, and set it on the host stand without sliding it toward him. Then she walked to a bench near the door and sat down. She placed the folio across her knees and folded her hands on top of it. She did not look at her phone. She did not look at Harlan. She looked at the room with the mild patience of someone who has waited before and knows exactly how long to wait. Dara found her section and took her first orders and tried not to watch. But she watched. 15 minutes later, the woman rose from the bench, went back to the host stand and picked up her card. She said to no one in particular, "Thank you for your time," and she walked out through the brass-handled door. That was what Dara thought. The next morning, she was rolling napkins at the side station when the assistant general manager came through the kitchen in a way that did not suggest a routine morning. His name was Ferris, and he was a man who moved slowly. He was not moving slowly. He went straight to the back office where Harlan kept his schedule binder and his keys, and he closed the door. Dara's senior colleague, a server named Octavio, who had worked at Cornerstone for 4 years, leaned against the wait station and watched the closed door with an expression that suggested he knew what it meant. "The woman who left last night," Dara said. Octavio picked up a lemon wedge and set it down again. "Her name is on the quarterly contract," he said. "The one that runs from October through June. Every board dinner, every regional reception, every private client event. 4 million and change for the year." Dara thought about the empty booth, the burning candle, Harlan's 6-stride approach, the way he'd looked at that printed confirmation without reading it. "She's the procurement director," Octavio said, "for the company that holds the contract. Has been for 6 years. She was on the corporate side of every renewal meeting. Her signature is on the last 3 contracts." He paused. "Harlan's been here 11 years. He's worked every one of those renewal dinners. Those were her dinners." Ferris came out of the back office a few minutes later. He was alone. The corporate offices of Viridian Hospitality Group, which owned Cornerstone and 5 other dining properties, were on the 12th floor of a building 7 blocks away. That morning, at 10 o'clock, 3 members of the group's regional board convened in the conference room where contract renewals were signed. The meeting had not been on the calendar at 7 o'clock the previous evening. It was on the calendar before 8 in the morning. Dara learned this later, in pieces, the way most people learn things they weren't in the room to see. The woman's name was Celeste Marand. She had been the senior procurement director at Dunmore and Stahl Partners for 6 years. Dunmore and Stahl held the annual hospitality contract with Viridian, the one that covered every private function at every Viridian property in the region. She had come to Cornerstone the previous evening for a quiet working dinner. She had a confirmed reservation. She had been met at the door by a floor manager who looked at her and concluded, without checking the system and without asking a question, that she had made a mistake about where she was supposed to be. The window booth had remained empty for the rest of service. At 10:17 on Friday morning, Celeste Moran sat across from Viridian's regional operations director and two board members and said, without apparent anger, that she had come to clarify a few things. She had the printed confirmation. She had the timestamp on the email. She had nothing she needed to prove, she said, because the record already proved it. She was not there to request an apology, though one was offered and formally entered into the meeting minutes. She was there because Dunmore and Stahl's standing policy required her to report material service failures at contracted vendors, and she was reporting one. The board asked her to excuse them for 8 minutes. She waited in the corridor in the same manner she had waited on Cornerstone's bench, hands folded, folio across her knees, entirely still. When they called her back in, the operations director told her that Harlan Griggs would be relieved of his floor management duties that day, and that his conduct had been inconsistent with Viridian's service standards and contractual obligations. A corrective action plan would be filed with HR by end of business. An independent review of reservation practices at Cornerstone would begin the following week. Celeste Moran listened to all of it. Then she said she would relay the board's response to Dunmore and Stahl's legal team and that they would be in contact regarding the contract's renewal status before the end of the month. She thanked them for their time and left. The Ford Olem contract was placed under formal review that afternoon. The outcome, the full suspension of the renewal pending the independent audit, was communicated to Viridian in a letter on Monday. The letter was 22 lines long. It did not raise its voice once. Dara heard the last of it from Octavio on Monday evening, between the third and fourth tables of the dinner rush. He'd seen the letter, or seen enough of it. He said it the way people say things they have been thinking about since Thursday. She didn't come back, Dara said. No, Octavio said. She didn't have to. Dara went back to her section. She took an order for the sea bass. She refilled a water glass. She passed the window booth, the same one, reset and candlelit again the way it had been on Thursday evening. And she thought about the woman who had stood in front of Harlan Griggs with a confirmation in her hand and said, plainly and without theater, that she had a reservation, who had sat on the bench with her hands folded and waited exactly as long as was needed, who had walked through the brass-handled door and said thank you for your time, and in doing so had been more certain of herself than anyone in that room. There were things Dara thought she understood about that job before she started. She understood that service was the product. She understood that the room had to run. What she had not understood, not fully, until that Thursday, was that the people who walked through the door were not extras in the room's story. They were the story. Every one of them. You checked your assumptions at the door, or the door eventually checked them for you. She thought she would remember that for a long time. She thought she already knew she would.